I was going to do this one last week, but I decided to do it this week in memory of Caroll Spinney. So as a tribute to Caroll, I'm going to be talking about Christmas Eve on Sesame Street. For us Muppet fans, Christmas Eve on Sesame Street is probably a classic. It was very, very well done. It was written by Joseph A. Bailey and John Stone. John was writer, producer, director for Sesame Street for a number of years. Really, he created Sesame Street in a lot of ways. Much like Sesame Street itself, Christmas Eve on Sesame Street was done in segments. In segment number 1, the Muppets and the human cast all went out skating. And the skaters for the Muppets, how that was done was they had a bunch of Ice Folly skaters in these costumes of the Muppets. Now when I was a kid, I remember seeing Bert, Ernie, Cookie Monster, and the Count all skating. And again, it was costumes, it wasn't the actual puppet characters. But as a kid, I was like, why are their mouths not moving? And you can click the corner of the video to watch Christmas Eve on Sesame Street, and you can see what I mean by that. But it was pretty cool. They did a couple of fun little skating activities, playing hockey with Bert's shoe, poor Bert, jumping over barrels, and playing a little game called Snap the Whip, which is basically all of them skating around in a circle, and Oscar the Grouch joins them. And they're going so fast he gets tossed into the air and out of the rink, and then Big Bird notices. And so Big Bird's sharing his excitement about the fact that it's Christmas Eve with Oscar, and he's like, oh, tonight's the night that Santa Claus comes, and he brings his big bag of toys and slides down the chimney. And that's the big plot point of this, because right after that, Oscar says to Big Bird, do you know how big the inside of a chimney is? About this big. So how's a guy like Santa Claus, who's built like a dump truck, how is he gonna get down all those skinny little chimneys? I'll be honest, that's something I never really questioned as a kid. I just kind of went with the flow of it. So Big Bird and a little girl named Patty. I don't know if Patty's been on Sesame Street after or before that, but this was really the only time I ever saw her. But they go around wondering to themselves, well, how does it happen? How is that possible? How does Santa get down the chimney? So they even go to Kermit the Frog, which is why Kermit is in the thumbnail for this, because maybe some people know, some people don't. But Kermit actually used to be on Sesame Street back in the day. He did a bunch of other things, but one of the things he really did was that really has stuck out for a lot of people was he was a news reporter. He was always getting caught in some kind of storm, or should I say some kind of snowstorm, given the fact that it's Christmas time. Anyway, so moving on from that, Kermit and Grover ask some kids, how is it possible? How does Santa get down the chimney? And they get some answers, but none of the answers are really, really helpful. So Big Bird decides to ask Snuffy for help by having Snuffy dress up as Santa and go somewhat, at least, because Snuffy's a big, big puppet. So he basically has him dress up as Santa and pretends that a barrel that's around Big Bird's nest is a chimney. And he says, okay, put in one foot, and then put in the other foot. Okay, now the other foot. Bird, I don't think Santa has more than 2 feet. So they manage to get Snuffy's feet into the barrel, and then Big Bird's like, okay, there we go. Now we see how Santa gets down the chimney. And Snuffy says, yeah, but quick question. Do we know how he gets out? Big Bird still has a bit of a problem with the logic. Yes, there's a way to get down, but is there a way to get out? Or is there a way to do it at all? So Big Bird decides to find out for himself by going up to the roof of 123 Sesame Street and wait for Santa to watch him go down the chimney. Meanwhile, Patty, the little girl that I was talking about just before, she notices that Big Bird's not in his nest and goes over to Gordon and Susan and explains Big Bird's gone, and everyone gets kind of worried that Big Bird's lost. So Big Bird's waiting up on the rooftop, and while he's there, a shadowy figure appears right close up to him, and Big Bird wakes up and that figure is gone. What do we think that figure was? I know what that figure was, but what do you guys think? You think maybe it was Santa? So Big Bird's so cold he decides to go into 123 Sesame Street and is reunited with Gordon and Susan, and Gordon brings him inside and to Big Bird's surprise, right in Gordon Susan's apartment, presents for everyone. And Big Bird's like, wait, what? How did that happen? What the? And so Gordon says, Big Bird, why did you want to know? And Big Bird says, well, it's important. And Gordon says, no, that's not what's important. What's important is, well, we lost you tonight, and we were all very worried, but now we've found you and we've got you back. Other segments in this included Bert and Ernie doing a reenactment of the Gift of the Magi, which I talked about in the last video with Mickey and Minnie. In this one, Bert and Ernie are struggling to find out what to get each other for Christmas, and Bert decides to get Ernie a soap dish for Rubber Ducky, and Ernie decides to get a cigar box for Bert's paperclip collection. So individually, they go to Hooper's store to buy gifts, and Ernie says to Mr. Hooper, what if I traded you Rubber Ducky for a cigar box? And Mr. Hooper's like, you sure about that? Because Mr. Hooper really knows how much Ernie loves his Rubber Ducky. So Ernie says, yeah, I just need that cigar box. And Mr. Hooper's like, okay, that's important to you, okay. And then Bert comes in and offers to trade his paperclip collection for a pink soap dish. And Mr. Hooper, again, asks Bert, are you sure? And Bert says yes. And I remember right toward the very end of one of those scenes in that segment where Bert looks back at Mr. Hooper and he says, Mr. Hooper, do you think maybe I could come and he's almost in tears. I really feel for Bert at this point, but he's like, he's trying to say, do you think maybe I could come and visit my paperclip collection? But he's struggling because he knows that he traded it, and if he comes to visit it, he's going to want them, but he can't afford to get them back. And I think Mr. Hooper really felt something for that as well, because later on, Bert and Ernie exchange presents, and Bert opens the cigar box, and Ernie says, I got that for your paperclip collection. And Bert's like, oh, okay. And Ernie's like, go get your paperclips so I can see them in that. And Bert, not knowing what else to say, he's like, hey, Ernie, why don't you open your present? Yeah, open your present. So that's what Ernie does, soap dish. And Bert says, I got that for Rubber Ducky. And Ernie's almost got the same reaction that Bert has, kind of not knowing what to say. And Bert says, go get Rubber Ducky so that I can see him in that. And struggling to speak, Mr. Hooper comes by to drop off some Christmas presents for Bert and Ernie. Bert's present is his paperclip collection. Ernie's present is his Rubber Ducky. Because Mr. Hooper knew that Bert and Ernie really, really didn't want to give up their most prized possessions. So he gave them to them for free. How lovely. In another segment, Cookie Monster tries to get a hold of Santa so that he can tell Santa what he wants for Christmas. And what do you suppose that is? Cookies. Duh. Doesn't he already have enough cookies? Like, he probably has a year's supply of cookies and is probably not even run out, let's be totally honest. But he tries to in 3 different ways. Number 1, he tries writing a letter. And he's thinking about what he wants, and he looks at his pencil, he's writing it with a pencil, and eats the pencil. Of course, I expect nothing more from Cookie Monster, let's be totally honest. So in the second segment, what he tries to do is type a letter to Santa. This is before you could type on computers. This was in the 70s. He was typing on a typewriter. So he's writing his letter and he's like, me wonder what kind of cookies Santa Claus is going to bring me. Maybe raisin cookies. And he starts eating the keys of the typewriter because they're about the size of raisins. And then he's like, maybe fortune cookies with delicious paper, and takes out the roll of paper from the typewriter and eats that, and then karate chops the typewriter and devours it. And he's still thinking about what to write, and he looks around, he's like, where'd typewriter go? And in the third segment, he tries to phone Santa, and he says, me get Santa on the phone. He's got the phone in his hand, and he's like, me get Santa on the phone, and me say, hi, Santa Claus. Yeah, and then me going to ask Santa to bring me cookies, and he's looking at the ends of the phone, and he's like, and me going to ask him to bring me 2 fudge and eats the receiver, and the cord is in his mouth, and you can hear on the phone, Santa answering his call, and Cookie's trying to respond, but is having a hard time because the phone is inside of him. He talks to Gordon about it, and Gordon says, well, Santa knows all about you, Cookie Monster. He'll bring you cookies. And Cookie Monster's upset. He's like, oh, me never get a hold of Santa now. And Gordon says, oh, sure, you'll get cookies from Santa, but it might be nice if you left him something too. And Cookie Monster is thinking about what could he leave him. He's thinking about maybe a necktie or shaving cream, and then Gordon's like, well, most people leave him cookies. Yeah, kind of out of luck there, not gonna lie. So with Sesame Street, it's always meant to be educational. So what have we learned from this special? With Big Bird wanting to know how Santa gets down the chimney, and then coming in to find out that Santa got into the apartment and left gifts for everyone, we've learned that you don't always have to know everything that you're curious about. Some things, are just kind of better if you just think of it in your mind, like that. And I think that's kind of a nice message. But yeah, Christmas Eve on Sesame Street, I actually have a copy of it right here. This is just the tape. It doesn't have a case, which is too bad because it's really a beautiful case. I'll put a photo of it right, yeah, there it is, right there. This actually was a Christmas present from my grandmother and her husband, my step-grandfather, who just passed away about a month and a half ago. And my grandmother passed away last year from Alzheimer's. So a lot of the time when I watch this, it makes me think of them. So yeah, that's it's a little memory that I have of them. Christmas Eve on Sesame Street, which if you haven't seen already, I highly recommend checking it out. It's one of the best Sesame Street Christmas specials. They've done quite a few good ones over the years, but that's definitely a classic. So that's all I've got to say about Christmas Eve on Sesame Street. I will see you next week for another Nostalgia Talk Christmas bonus. Peace!